worry about it. Also, hi, Rebecca. Thanks for coming on our off cycle. October community council meeting. I'm so excited to see all of you. I'm gonna call it technically 7:08 for our measures. So tonight's meeting, we don't have anything to actually vote on except for accepting the minutes of September because I still can't find June. We'll get it solved for November, I promise. But I can tell you some things we passed in June because that's in the president's report. Update on those. So tonight I'm going to run the meeting by Robert's rules to the best of my ability. So if someone knows Robert's rules better than me, please correct me. At the very end of the meeting, because we have a very light agenda tonight, I wanted to check in with everybody to see what do you want to see happen in Spenard. So we'll have kind of a facilitated discussion on what should we talk about at our meetings? Who do you want to hear from? What municipal departments or state departments? What is going well in Spenard? What do you love about Spenard? So we'll have that kind of discussion with our time at the end of the meeting after we've gone over our reports. Without further ado, I'd like the members of the executive board to introduce themselves. I'm the president, I'm the president. And if you guys could like raise your hand and say your name. Barbara Lonsdale.
Jed Smith.
Julie Leonard. Peggy Off.
Margaret Bennett.
Thank you. And Jed is monitoring the chat, so thank you, Jed. And remember to talk to Owl. Can folks online hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I will entertain a motion regarding the September minutes. To approve them? Second. Second? Any objections to approving them as written? All right, hearing none. Apologies, I'm slightly out of order, but I will go over the report. So the president's report is also posted on the Spenard Community Council website at communitycouncils.org. Yes, ma'am.
What is true with the first leadership doing that?
Jason?
Yes. Okay. Thank you.
So this month's win, I want to emphasize, is the palm tree. The palm tree returned on October 1st. There were palm tree balloons. It was great. My palm tree balloon is it's shrunk, but it's looking great for a week there. So we had a good time. Palm tree balloons, stickers, food, and the palm tree is back. So if you drive by Spenard and 30th, it has returned. If you're not familiar with the history, is there anybody here who wants to give that quick history of Spenard palm tree? Who knows it better than me?
Can.
They love
Used to be next to the Paradise Inn that kind of suffered the fate that the Chelsea Inn suffered, and so that hotel went away. There was an issue about what to do with the palm tree, and then it was taken to a site, and then there was a legal battle about it, and somehow it came back, and it was resurrected over where the Paradise Inn used to be, which is now an empty lot.
And we'll soon have additional trees, I hear. And she put boulders up at the base of the tree. It looks really great. I'm interested to see it back. I also put some links in that report if you wanted to look at some of the news stories that they did about it.
I have a question.
Yes.
So, I came to last month's meeting and nobody announced if there was gonna be do we know, or was we just sort of like out there?
It was kind of last minute all the things have come together. I think it was really only announced on Facebook. It might have been announced other places. That's just where I saw it. If we want to have a bigger party, I imagine Cindy Berger would be amenable to having a big party in the parking lot. If we wanted to do something a little bit more formal, we couldn't be there for the raising of the tree because apparently they didn't want a crowd for the okay. But folks were there for the, I guess, actual lighting of the palm tree. So I imagine we could probably similar in the future. And somebody has a great idea about how to do that. And our party here. So if somebody else knows how to do that really well, let me know. We did pass 2 resolutions in June. And I wanted to give some updates on how those are progressing. The one I think that's seen the most movement, we passed one for state parks and trails. So I put some links in that report where you can see camp actions and the recent activity, and what is happening now that they put in the camping and fire ordinance. I did not prepare, I have more information on as well as part of your report. One of our time bound requests was to put a Jersey barrier at the end of Iowa Drive that blocks off a piece of private property that had become sort of the roots home base, if you will, for a lot of problems that were happening on Fisher Creek Trail. That Jersey barrier has gone up, and from what I'm hearing, issues have gone down. So we're excited that that has happened. There have been some lighting improvements in at least one of the tunnels, but I think it still needs a little bit of maintenance because it's, Jenny might know more about that, but like the lighting's installed, but it's working sometimes.
Yes, there's actually, I think the resolution mentions 4 tunnels. One of them is under Spenard Road here. It doesn't have, I don't think, any lighting. But the other 3 are over near the kind of cross underneath Minnesota and International. There's 2 that cross under International and 1 long one that crosses under Minnesota. The one under Minnesota has lighting. It does work, but it's terrible. It's like so dim that even when it's on, you can't see. So I think I'm glad that it's working. Like maybe that's a result of our resolution, but maybe the next thing we ask for is an upgrade to that lighting because it is definitely not safe. I have seen people crossing over across on International where you're really not supposed to be crossing. It's just not set up for that because they don't feel safe going through that tunnel where it's dark and there are camps set up there, rampant drug use. So let's acknowledge the win, but also more work to do.
Yep. Yeah, and regarding essentially aesthetics for that triangle that got set up, that's kind of stalled. So I will be reaching out to additional state and local representatives, see like where we start, what's happening. And the part that I missed, the part where we will continue our commitment to promote and activate greenbelt trails and park use and advocate for safe and healthy access for all. Some members of the executive board went out last weekend in the rain and cleaned up what was left of an abandoned camp. I don't think it was an abandoned camp, but it had been reported several times, and this stuff just kind of stayed there. I haven't had a chance to check to see if our efforts got finalized. No, Judge said no. So we went out and we cleaned up what we could, but because we can't take an automobile onto the trails, we couldn't pack it up in a car, and there was too much there for us to carry off the trails. So it's cleaned up, and what we'd like to do is maybe quarterly have a neighborhood cleanup where somebody identifies a spot that, you know, this has been like this for a minute. Maybe we can go, you know, hours combined, clean it up and work with either a department or we can take it away ourselves. So we're working on the logistics with that, but if folks would like to be involved in just, I would love to go clean up some stuff on Saturday morning at 10 or noon. That's a great way just to get to know your neighbors. We'll bring gloves, we have bags, so that's an option as well. The resolution on town centers and transit supportive development corridors, that one was good enough that I'm still waiting for you to find the updates. Because it's still in progress.
Yes, can we talk, so I'm about, my daughter Olivia is about to turn into a pumpkin. As a result, so first of all, I'm David Hanson, and thank you so much for doing all this coordination and setup. It is not easy, as I know. But I think we should get Tisdale back in here. They're happy to come talk to community councils because I think it's, you know, it's changing so rapidly that I understood that we passed it back in June. I think it's worth interrogating that further. I'm an architect and I found my hesitations with what's proposed forward. I'm obviously for development and for an acreage. I'm not going anywhere anytime soon. I've got a beautiful young family and like we want to stay here forever. It's the best place in the world. But I think that what you're proposing is moving pretty quickly and it needs further interrogation. So I'd like it. I mean, they're happy to come talk here, so maybe we could like get that scheduled for the next meeting. I'm really sorry to interrupt, but again. If you want.
Margaret, why don't you put that to minutes as a sort of reach out one? Oh, reach out to TISTA so they can present as Spenard. TSDO.
Oh, sure.
Thanks.
Thanks. I think I'm about at the end anyway. We're gonna have an update on trick or treat history later in our agenda. The Federation of Community Councils, so that is the organization that supports community council generally. They're working on updating their bylaws. They haven't been updated since October 25. So we're looking at kind of changing the membership structure. That's gonna be on the agenda for the October meeting, which is 1 week from today. And then if it's not voted on, we'll look at it again in November. I just talked to you a lot. Does anybody have any questions? Okay, let's move on to community announcements. Does anybody have a community announcement? Can someone does?
So, Susanna here of the Mesh Alex Shelter at the Alex Hotel. If anybody has a need for a service animal, we have one that might be in need of a home. Sad story attached, not gonna go there, but it's an older dog that middle-aged dog on that farther end of that scheme. She's probably 6, but she looks like the same size as the dog from Bolt, and she's amazing. So if anybody knows of anybody that has a true legitimate need or places at heart for a service animal who lost her human, my card is on the table.
Yeah. You have additional community announcements. Going once, okay, we're back on schedule. We will go to 3 for boards. Lieutenant Lee says Douglas. So if you recall at our September meeting, we had a few case and we asked if he or someone from the department would be willing to come and give updates, reports, Q&A. So there are 10 minutes and we have Lieutenant Hughes with us. Welcome.
Thank you. Brian Hughes, Lieutenant Transportation Division, Bainbridge Police. So I manage the whole team, the MIT team. I do crime intel. I also have the impact team, formerly CAP team. So I have a pretty big stake in the community here. So it's good to see everybody out, especially babies. We love to see the babies. So it's good to see y'all. So I think we wanted to talk a little bit about the Chelsea Inn, kind of the disposition of that, what that looks like. So it is federally seized still. So generally how that works is the seizure will kind of manage or maintain until there's some level of adjudication on the case. And that's generally what we see. The federal government will retain custody. So the FBI sees the property. They did normally in a law enforcement capacity, they'll transfer that over to the Marshal Service, who will maintain property during the case. And then depending on the disposition of the case, a lot of times that property will fall into the federal government. Sometimes, and then they generally go a lot of times they'll auction those properties off because they get money for that, seizure money for that. And so it goes to community member who buys it, whoever. So that's kind of what the status is. It's a federal case and it's a pretty high level federal case, so I don't have oversight of that case. I'm just not quite that high in the chain of command. So I don't know where the case is, but it's a complex case. Some of our officers in the impact team actually helped on the seizure the day of the actual operation. So we did have a play in that. So that's kind of where. Any questions about that? I can't give you a ton of information about it, not because it is an ongoing case, but that's kind of the process. But
This may not be in your purview from what you just said, but I'm a neighbor and I've always wondered. I understand the fencing and everything. I was surprised to see the private home that's on the back side of the parking lot is now also with an 8-foot chain link fence. Do you know what's going on with that? Okay, thank you.
Have you all been monitoring any other activity that kind of spilled out since the Chelsea had closed? I mean, there was a lot of activity going on inside there, obviously. I know there were 2 high-level arrests, but this seemed like a pretty organized operation that has moved elsewhere in the neighborhood. I'm just curious how you guys are.
Well, hopefully the organization hasn't moved, I mean, some of them are in jail, and, you know, some of them are under federal indictment and investigation, so. So maybe some people that were engaging some of the activity, are back out in the community. So when we contacted a lot of the people inside the facility during the day of the incident, they were all ID'd and interviewed. And then basically that information went to the federal government, the FBI. We asked a series of questions. One of those questions was, you know, do you have a home? Do you have a place to go? Like, and most of those people actually said yes, that it wasn't their permanent residence, shockingly, and they were gonna go someplace else. So in regards to the impact on the community, you know, they said they had someplace to go, so I don't know if whether or not they're telling us the truth or not. I mean, it's shocking, but people do lie to the police, quite often. So that is, you know, monitoring that in the case sense is associated just with that case. I don't know if the FBI is still working potential suspects or leads associated to that case, but I would assume so. The Anchorage Police Department is not.
So my question is, one of the two of the highest individuals is out on bail, and that person has been seen as late as last evening. Patrolling this area, connecting with bicyclists who then feed the Spenard area down by the Alex and the Barrett. So we have pictures of the vehicle and some transactions happening. Is that helpful to keep capturing and sending to you? Because one of the people involved who's on bail is actively selling.
Yes, so if you have evidence of a crime, whether the photographs or anything like that, and you're seeing a crime occur, I would ask you to call from 1-1. If it's a emergency, somebody's being assaulted or something like that, I would call 911 and report it. If you're just capturing it, or if somebody's sending you the information, like I have a picture of this incident that occurred, it appears to be some sort of hand transaction. Don't really know, can't see any drugs, just see two hands coming together. It's a little suspicious to us. You can send that information in the Anchorage Police Department, and then they'll get it to the appropriate investigator.
Thank you. We're keeping a watch with all of our staff for a particular white Dodge vehicle
Okay.
associated with these behaviors. They are not affiliated with anybody in the community, I don't imagine, but this is their place of business, so be vigilant.
Along that subject of sort of the migration on Chelsea, there seems to be an increase there at Minnesota Park. And a lot of the folks that used to hang out around the Chelsea.
Yeah.
And I know at least personally every day around mid-afternoon, there's always a pulse point alert for CPR over there. I'm sure we're walking back and forth from there around the midday time, seeing a lot of these things happening. I was wondering if there's any intention to have an increased presence in that area.
So we actually had a pretty sharp arrest, significantly in Minnesota Park. We made a couple of arrests in there. That was where we made our first arrest on camping ordinances in Minnesota Park. We made quite a few warrant arrests in Minnesota Park, and we've increased our presence in that park probably tenfold over the last 4 or 5 weeks. So you will continue to see us in there. One of the challenges we face is we encourage our patrol officers to take we call it officer initiated activity in specific areas of town that they have a propensity for higher level of criminal activity. Minnesota Park is one of those areas. So our area cars in the Spenard area, we ask them to go into those areas when they get downtime. And I use that term very loosely because they generally don't have downtime, but we do see a little bit of kind of a lull in calls for service coming into the dispatch centers early in the morning hours. So 3 o'clock in the morning, sometimes 3:30, maybe to 5. Then they like picks back up at 6 to 7. And we encourage our officers, even if most of them are doing paperwork, so they're writing the reports from the night prior. And we encourage them to go to the parks and sit in there, write their reports in prime areas. So that presence of the police officer is there. And that generally deters almost 99%. So that's all.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Jason, and then Roy.
Is you related to Chelsea? Mine's tangentially, so.
Just to one you just said.
Yeah, mine, I have a question related to the camping ordinance. I see that it's an effective tool for breaking up camps in a more timely manner than what we've done in the past. I have heard anecdotally from people that do outreach that it makes it more difficult to track the people that they've been working with to try and get them to whatever they may need to get them out of that situation. Are you guys tracking that impact of, scattering a camp, but then not knowing where the people were there to help are going? Any delays that would getting them to the services that they need?
Yeah, so the Hope team is probably one of the largest, if not the most consistent outreach team for the city. And we have to be cautious when we use the word track. So with data, we do try to kind of collect some data in association to our outreach efforts with the Anchorage Police Department. We knew that occurs. It's occurred since outreach even existed, right? It's not a new problem for outreach. It's just a little bit more defined at this point because the ordinance does exist. The ordinance doesn't cover a huge landmass in the city. It's actually quite small relatively compared to the entire city. And so we are going to continue to enforce those areas, but specifically to your point, we are not monitoring how that impacts if if the outreach folks, we talk to the outreach folks specifically about displacement of individuals and how they should manage that when they go up and talk to them, specifically trying to kind of ask those questions like, hey, where are you going now? Where can we get a hold of you? How can we follow up with you? Here's a link up point, comfortable giving us that information. So providing them some strategies how to do that. We certainly engage with that. Our team tries to help that initiative a little bit, but we're not tracking that specifically for the police department.
Fair, and yeah, my apologies, I used the wrong terminology. It was shared to me from an officer.
Say tracking and police in the same sentence.
Thanks for this.
I was wondering, as far as the ordinance goes, is there a protocol for, are you coming in after you see somebody there for a certain amount of time and asking them to move, giving them 20 minutes, and then if they don't move in that 20 minutes, you're giving them a ticket or arresting?
Yes, great question. We actually we developed and implemented an application on their cell phones, our officer cell phones. And so what we do is we go to a specific, if we identify camp and it's in a safety zone. So that's a zone that's identified in the statute that they can't be camping in. What the officers do is they make an assessment based on reasonableness, right? So the reasonableness standard is a pretty universal standard for law enforcement across the nation. And they look at the camp and they say, a reasonable person would probably think that 15 minutes is appropriate for this person to leave. But in some cases, it might be 24 hours, depending on how much stuff is there, right? They may have a lot of things that they need to move, and you're asking them to move and comply with the law. You have to give them a reasonable amount of time to comply with your direct order based on the violation law. And so we want to make sure that we do that appropriately. And so we don't exceed 24 hours generally. There could be some very specific circumstances that may occur, but generally it's a 24-hour period that we allow them at the maximum. And then that's documented into our CAD system, which is a fancy word to say how we monitor our activity in police work that's discoverable to attorneys. But we also use this application, which is just an operational tool that the officers can use, identify, or say this is the location, and puts a point on a map for the officers, and then that point after 24 hours turns a different color, and then they know that they can go back and enforce at that time because they gave a 24-hour notification. So we've taken a lot we've done some significant outreach prior to the ordinance going into effect to educate folks that are unsheltered about the implications to the new ordinance, basically the elements of the crime. And we've done a pretty extensive job in conjunction with our GIS team to develop this application so that we can be as accurate and as fair as possible.
How many arrests do you know have been under this new code?
So I think we've had about 4 so far.
I believe it's also on the dashboard.
It is on the dashboard. If you go to the dashboard, well, I think the dashboard's live. If everybody did know that there's a dashboard you can go to, and it basically goes over the fire ordinance and the camping ordinance. You can go on, you can look at it, tells you how many people we had comply in the area, and then how many people had to be arrested. Unfortunately, we do make arrests in the camps for other crimes when we have contact with them. But for the ordinance itself, I think it's around 4. the dashboard, the public facing dashboard, it's about a month update, so every month we update it, so you'll see it. The data from this month will get updated to the next month, and it's kind of a rolling data, but you can go in and actually select, let's say you had a specific month in mind that you wanted to look at, you can click on that in the dashboard or just for that.
Okay. So what do we, as a community, figure out, like, we make it so this issue doesn't just move to another part of our community and we're still, we should activate the space. From a law enforcement perspective, what activation has been successful?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I worked on a pretty extensive town square park project over the last 8 months with the city and the municipality. We're standing up a real-time crime center. The Assembly gracefully has looked at those needs and has supported us in this effort and that includes a lot of different things. Some cameras and some other tools that we can use in that space. But one of the most incredible aspects of Town Square Park was when we, the city, took a very deliberate approach to activate the Town Square Park. And we did it by engaging with community partners to come back to Town Square Park, put up, so like everything from street vendors to food trucks, dancers, whatever, it didn't matter. Parks and Recs went all out and tried to grab people, bring them in and say like, hey, let's do that. And and it worked very well. And as a smaller sub-community of the larger municipality community, I think that's a great way to activate your space by getting people to there. So farmers markets, dance recitals, whatever that looks like, get people out there, get people excited about being out in the community and back into your green spaces. And I think that it's probably one of the most effective tools as a community that we can use to say, this is a space for everyone, right? And we want to, and so we need to all follow those rules and allow everyone to enjoy the space.
Do you have any additional questions?
Yeah, one of my concerns is, the tunnel under Spenard, the
Yes.
vagrancy there,
Yeah,
that
it's
people just can't down or like went ran down in the sleeping bag and kind of like you can't get a bite through there because their stuff is everywhere.
Yeah.
So I come and sometimes the dispatcher goes, oh, that's a park and rec problem. But I would think vagrancy is something that the police would be
Yeah,
wanting to enforce. I'm just curious what your take on it.
that's my problem. So,
Yeah.
but the special may not know, or long day, not enough coffee. But it's a little bit of both, right? So we've identified that area as somewhat of a problem area, and it's a natural place for people to go because it gets them out of the elements and stuff. But it is a hazard to bikers, to walkers. People feel uncomfortable going underneath the bridge sometimes because there's a perception of fear. They don't know what's under some of these tarps. Totally get all that, and that forces them sometimes to try to cross the road. Above that, we don't want that. So a couple of things we're trying to do is they've increased the lighting, or they haven't done it yet. They are going to increase the lighting, so putting brighter bulbs down there or bigger lights down there. That's Parks and Recs is trying to do that now. We've made a concerted effort to my team, my impact team, to go down there and at least check that area on a day-to-day basis. The challenges with tunnels, and Spenard Tunnel is not the only tunnel over at Boniface. We have a couple of tunnels that we are challenged with a little bit, with people taking shelter under there, because it is for folks that are unfortunately unsheltered. It's a safer spot to be, so it's naturally going to gravitate people over there. So it's this constant effort for us to go out there and say, hey, like you block in the area, right? And there's multiple crimes being committed in that capacity, right? So there's camping, you can't camp on the street. There's pedestrian interference. People can't get around, right? So we want to make sure that we also address some of the needs of the individual and make sure that they're okay, that if there's a place where they can go, that we can try to facilitate that. But ultimately, we're going to be moving them out of that space. So every time we have contact with them, and generally in the underpasses, people aren't putting tents up, right? They're just sleeping there. And so we can move them immediately. It's just a constant thing. And so, we could be there literally 10 minutes before you get there and somebody else slides in there, takes up, right? And so sometimes it looks like, oh my God, cops don't do anything, right? It's like, we do, but there's a lot of things out there that we gotta do. And so call 311 and say, hey, some folks under here and we'll call section.
Is there any way you can put cameras in these tunnels so that you can, yeah.
So great question. Yes, there possibly, right? Anytime you're talking about new technologies and new expenditures in terms of money and things like that, we are looking at new ways with this new technology package to deploy technology across the city. And how we can kind of leverage technology and offset some of the challenges that were associated with personnel. And so we are thinking through those things, not just in tunnel, but other locations. But I will tell you, the good news is that we do have a full academy this year, or right now there's a full academy. And it looks like we're gonna have a full academy next cycle. And the emphasis here is for us to continue that trend, to get people in that academy, right? And get full academies on and on and on. It takes about 10 to 15 months to train an officer, going from academy, I know, a long time, to being cut loose officer doing the work on their own. But when we get consistently full academies, you're gonna see a lot of officers going going in service onto the street, and being able to do a lot more work for us.
Wondering if anything is being done, I guess, from the perspective of APD, or if you have an update on, I guess that's a grocery store. It seems like every grocery store in town now has somebody out front trying to harass me for my receipt. I think I've actually spoken with you directly after I was assaulted by a security officer at the Fred Meyer lights because I refused to show him my receipt, which you were legally not obligated to do, by the way. For $37 groceries for a birthday party.
Yeah.
I never actually saw anything from that case. I believe it was forwarded to a prosecutor, and I've never heard from a prosecutor on that case. But
I would encourage you to call back the prosecutor's office and ask them.
I understand that a receipt checker was shot at the cars on Minnesota on their license.
That wasn't as we go, that was just
That's what that's related. But I'm just wondering if anything is being.
yeah, that's great. That's great questions. So theft, we'll talk about theft and shoplifting within the community because it's a significant problem for us here, just like it is anywhere else in the nation, right? So we have taken some steps to initiate some theft protocols. So I personally and my teams, we've partnered with a lot of businesses and corporations across the city. We deal with folks that own businesses or own properties that support businesses. And we listen to kind of some of their concerns and how they're seeing things in the street or on the field, if you will. One of the things we're doing right now is we have 2 officers assigned to 2 very highly targeted locations, retail locations. And it's kind of a pilot program where we're basically putting them in there for 30 to 35 days, not inside the stores, but working with the stores to identify some of the shortcomings that the store might be doing with some security issues on their end, how their personnel, their staff is managing reporting police to the police. A lot of times you'd be amazed at how many times we get called to a location, we get there and somebody has stole hundreds of dollars of goods. And we're like, yep, let's go. Where they at? Like, oh, we just want to leave. We don't want to press charges. It's like, well, it's okay. This is a problem, right? This person's stealing. This behavior is not going to change unless we do something to change that behavior. Just telling them that come back, it's not going to work. And so educating the leadership teams and the employees on how that works. We've seen great success on one of the stores just in 15 days. They're working about 13 cases. They have 23 charges pending. We've made 5 arrests and 8 ones that are pending based on their interaction with those stores. It's not something we're going to be able to sustain long term, but what we're trying to do is set a precedent so we can kind of educate other stores. We are also using the technology and communicating with stores on how they can utilize technology. We're looking at a process right now where we might be able to have a program that the stores can use. It's a civilian store. It's not a police program that can better communicate with us on their case file. So their surveillance videos, their pictures, their investigative reports from their loss prevention officers, witness statements from people in the store before we get there, and trying to make that a little bit more seamless so that we can expedite the process to take these people to justice, whether it's a arrest warrant or at least getting some information out to other stores. We're really wanting to get stores to start communicating a little bit better with one another, sharing information. So if somebody hits a store like Fred Meyer's and then walks, they're probably gonna walk down the street and hit another store like REI. But if those two stores are talking to one another and sharing information, it makes it a lot harder for those, to do that. Yeah. Before they even get to the store, and then let LP can say, you're trespassing, you can't. So we're doing a lot of work in the retail space. It's a very unique area to work with law enforcement because every corporation has a different policy on how to handle all these different, incidents that occur in your store. So for us, it's a new customer and problem every single time. We're trying to find commonality there so we can build bridges between those stores and really have a good way ahead on how we're dealing more specifically. So.
Did you have any big reports that you wanted to share?
No big reports.
Okay.
I just kind of wanted to make sure everybody heard about Chelsea. I know that was a big thing for this community, so we're thankful that it occurred. And keep calling 311, reporting any incidences that you find. And the big thing is be patient. I know that's a horrible thing to say right now, but I feel like a lot of things going, the community doesn't see a lot of good work. We are starting to move the needle in the right direction. And you can always come out and do a ride along with an officer if you want to see it firsthand. Just be prepared. But thank you for your time, and I appreciate your attention, and thank you for letting us serve you this meeting.
Thank you.
Yes, the plan is to invite them back on a regular basis, so we can continue to get those updates and reports. So thank you to Christina Banks for joining us today. I forgot to plug in my computer, so I that while we hear from our next person to leave is Vice Chair and Rose.
Yeah, hey everybody, I'll stay here because I think it's seen me no matter where I am. I'll give a few updates and I'm gonna first kind of respond or add some information from what was already shared, then I'll get into what I was gonna share as an update, and then I'm gonna pass around. I only have one flyer, so I'm passing it around for your information. I'll talk about the event, and then I sent it out so that the council can distribute it. So I'm gonna start passing it as well, just for context. So please don't keep the flyer. I only have one anyway. So first, on the palm tree, yeah, that was really great news. I was also not aware of it, so I'm glad that there was a party, but you were not alone in not being invited to that party. But I will say it was great. I happened to drive by it right as they were, not when folks were there, but it was already lit up, so it looked really great. And I was reflecting back, especially even before that, on what happened to the Chelsea is really an echo of what happened at the Paradise Inn. So I think we focus on the problems we have today, and then sometimes we forget how much Spenard has had its ups and downs as a neighborhood, and especially places like that attract criminal activity and really a lot of sadness. So I was looking back at old articles. There was articles about they had a medium come through and kind of get the bad vibes out of there because people died in that building and it was not their choice. And so I think that's important to remember. But we can at least celebrate the thing that remains, which is the palm tree, and was such a staple of the neighborhood. So glad to see you back. One suggestion I had is maybe this for our second Saturday folks would be interested. And I know second Saturday is this Saturday, the 11th. So I would imagine that's short notice for them, but they may be interested in November. I mean, it's going to be colder, may not still have snow outside. That might be another idea. So just something to pass along. In terms of the dashboard, I think I'm glad he was here. He already covered that. I'll also mention the trail cleanup. So another council to the south, Taku Campbell, they've had a very live conversation along the same lines along Campbell Creek Trail. So by Diamond and just move east into Midtown area. So there's been some volunteers down there and the same problem, which is we have all this trash, we cleaned it up, it's too much to carry out. Can we drive a truck on the trails? So I know the answer to that is generally no, at least a private vehicle. But I did connect them, and this is a suggestion with Diana Rhodes at the Anchorage Park Foundation. So of course the Park Foundation does not do trash cleanup, but they do park cleanups. And they are really good at coordinating volunteer events. So I connected Diana with those folks, and she was able to give them some resources. And they were kind of also wondering, how do we do a volunteer event, all those kinds of things. So so they're definitely not going to sign up to do all of the park cleanups, but I would talk to those folks. And I think it's a great question of kind of whose responsibility it is to clean up our parks, and knowing that It goes way beyond park maintenance. The next thing I mentioned, that's really great news about the Jersey barrier on Iowa Drive. I hadn't heard that, but I know we were in a meeting, I think August of 2023, and I know Peggy, you and others had brought up that idea. So I'm glad they finally did it. And I'm glad that it seems to be having an effect. And then I was gonna ask really quick, Sarah, the triangle, is that the Lois and Benson triangle? Okay, so that I know is DOT land. And so I think one of the ongoing challenges for the entire city is dealing with DOT and getting them to do what will be in the interest of the city. So we can follow up, but just to say, this council knows better than most that that will be a challenge. So anyway, but that's a good thing to follow up on. And I know
That
that,
might also be the issue we had with the thing that we cleaned up last week.
Yes.
It's DOT, right?
yeah, fair. So I think it's a fair question. But again, if they own a bunch of land and a bunch of right of way in our town, then we should be figuring out how to do this together. Okay, so that's my other updates. So then I will get to what I'm related to what I'm passing around and in general, which is the budget. So we are in budget season for the city. We are on a calendar year fiscal year, so we go through our budget process this fall. We are scheduled to vote on the budget in mid-November. The mayor's already put out their draft budget, so I'll go through kind of the timeline, how to engage. I'll kind of give some information about what the mayor's version of the budget is, because I know there was a press conference I think last week, and then what you might expect to see going forward, and then also connecting it back to the event that myself and member Baldwin Day are planning. So I'll end with that, and then I'll also say again, I sent the information for that about 5 minutes before I left the house, so it'll go out after this meeting, and we're getting the word out. So on the budget, the process is September 1st, the mayor introduced the 120-day memo, which is essentially a high level, here's my priorities, here's how much revenue we think we're gonna get, here's any big red flags, did we lose money, are we getting more money, etc. Really that preview of what the budget will look like. So now we're in the next phase where the mayor has released the draft budget book. So the operating budget, that's our main core services, our capital budget, which is what feeds into our bond projects and what we ask the state or the federal government for. As well as our enterprises and utilities, so AWU, solid waste services, Merrifield, the port, all of these other entities that are part of the muni but have their own budgets and are not funded with our general taxes, they're funded with their own fees or rates or other structure. As well as the Anchorage Community Development Authority budget, or Easy Park, or the folks who downtown deal with hurricane, and other things. So all of those things are considered our budget. The mayor introduces their draft version, and then this Friday, we're going to hear in a work session, the assembly will hear an overview of that budget. So any changes to departments, again, revenue, talking about alcohol tax, marijuana tax, which is now going into our early childhood fund, all of those things are in the draft budget. So we will get briefed on that. And then the places where the public plugs in are 2 required public hearings. So that's in our charter, that there's 2 public hearings on the budget at least. So those will be at our next meeting, which is Tuesday, October 21st. And each of these is in its own ordinance. And so there's the testimony on the operating budget, the capital budget, right? Each piece, you can testify 8 times if you want, as long as it's relevant to those items. So that's the first hearing. The second hearing will be the first meeting in November, which is November 4th. So on a Tuesday. And then, or I think, let me double check on that. It's on Tuesday. And then we will be voting on the budget on November 18th. So often what we've done is continued the hearing or held a 3rd public hearing on the budget. So there may be another opportunity, but I would encourage you to either testify at one of those meetings, or even better, send us an email with your thoughts in writing on the budget. So you don't have to be a budget expert. What we want to hear is what is important to you, right? And I think as we move through the next few weeks, you'll hear more as we get a brief on the budget, and also I know local news covers it, so you'll probably see more information out there of what's being proposed. So then I'll go back to really what we heard from the mayor's office in the press conference, which is this is a continuation budget. So it's basically a copy paste of this year's budget, not a lot of policy choices made, and not a lot of room to make those choices. So we do not have COVID relief funding anymore from the federal government. We have lost millions and millions of state funding over the years to both our operating budget and repaving our roads, many other capital projects. So none of that is in the budget. And I think, those folks watching Juno knows that we're not going to get a windfall of cash falling on our heads this coming year. And so So really it's saying, here's what we can do with the money we have. And so it is currently 175,000 under the tax cap. That is what constrains our operating budget. I would expect that we tax to the cap, because if we don't tax to the cap, we permanently cut the budget by that amount. So if we decide to say we're gonna save $1 million in this year's budget, we'll never get it back. And the challenge is, tax cuts sound great, and also inflation, cost of healthcare, cost of paying employees, cost of everything, utilities, all of that you are feeling, the city is also feeling. And so the implication of cutting the budget now is it is a forever cut. That's the way that the tax cap works. We also know from the mayor's office that we have about $1 billion of backlog in deferred maintenance of our roads, and those are roads the city owns, so not even the state roads. We have another unknown cost for all of our facilities, this rec center. We certainly pass bonds over time to pay for improvements, but we know we're not keeping up, right? And it's hard to do so when costs are going up. And so really what the mayor has put on the table, and really is the same thing I've been saying for a while, having been deep in the budget for several years now, is that we have to both look at how we're paying for things. So we need to consider revenue. We also need to consider service cuts. And so, some of the things she said were maybe we start depaving roads. We intentionally say we're not going to pave those roads anymore, or we're going to turn them back into gravel. It could mean things like we're going to have fewer roads on our high priority plow list. It could mean rolling closures at the Anchorage Fire Department, which means basically some stations are not operating at full capacity. You can't send somebody out on a fire truck with one staff person. So if we don't have enough staff, you've probably already seen we've had shortages of drivers. And so we've had some missed routes. I mean, I could go on and on of all the things that we would feel, but also if we don't make choices and we keep the budget exactly the way it is, that's the kind of choices we have to make. And so it is a real serious conversation, and it's a hard thing to talk about. But we're at the point that the city can't wait any longer to deal with these things. And I think you could say there's the same conversation happening at the state level. And no one is coming to save us, right, in Anchorage. And so at least not in this environment in this decade. And so these are hard conversations, but what myself and member Baldwin Day are proposing is we need to have this conversation with the public. We want to provide factual, current information about what's in our budget. We don't have to be budget experts, but we want you all to understand how the tax cap works, where it came from, some of the ways that it used to work in the 1980s when we were a rapidly growing city, and it's not working so great now. We need to talk about the cost of maintaining our roads, let alone building roads. Like, we have to have these conversations. And so myself, legislative services, our staff, and Aaron Baldwin Day have been really working on how we do that. So what we're proposing to start, and again, not instead of what the mayor's doing, not instead of our budget discussion, but in addition, starting this conversation. We want to have that real conversation about our budget. And so what we have organized in the flyer that's circulating is in a public event on Tuesday, October 28th. It's going to be 5:30 to 7:30. There will be childcare. We've arranged that. There'll be some food for dinner. We want to make sure you're well fed if we're talking serious issues. And we are not just going to talk at you. We're going to have a conversation. We're going to ask you to think about things individually. We'll have small group conversation, and then we'll have some reflections as a full group. And this is not the first or the only thing that we need to do on the budget, but it's a place to start. And so I invite you to come. It'll be, I think, at whatever the BP Energy Center is called now in Midtown. The information is on the flyer. You can RSVP there. We will be distributing this out by email and trying to get the word out. Please also share with your friends. And I think, again, we're not walking out of that room with our own budget or solving all these problems, but we're going to start with asking these questions. And they are, what are you willing to pay for? That's the bottom line. And in order to answer those questions, you need to have some of the same information we do. So because voters are going to make these choices. This is not an assembly choice. It's not a mayor's choice. Anything that we change that's big needs to go on the ballot. And so that's what's on the table. So I know that's a heavy conversation, but I really hope that you join me if you're interested. And then also just to put out there, if you have questions about how our budget works, we won't be able to answer every question in the meeting, but we're really working hard to communicate with people to answer those questions. Where are my taxes going? What are my property taxes paid for? How are we paying for homeless shelters, right? There's all these questions that we get. And so we really want to know what people want to know, and what information you need to make the kinds of decisions about our future.
I have a quick question on that.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's possible to do and say it one sentence. Go, where did the tax cap come from?
It came from the 1980s. And it was in an environment, again, where we were rapidly growing. And the concern was we don't want the government budget to get too big.
And so to change it, you would do a vote for.
It's in the charter. Yeah, so pretty much anything that we have to do is either a charter vote or it's approving a tax, which in our charter says goes to the people. It's like a sales tax, a retail tax that everybody pays.
Thanks for the update, Aaron. Just a quick clarification, did you say the backlog on the return was billion with a B?
Yes. Yeah, and that's not the only, I mean, there's multiple $1 billion backlogs of payments. I know the school district buildings, it's also a billion, so that would be 2 billion. Then add facilities like this, who knows what, but we're figuring that out.
Thanks.
So I never knew you were such an eloquent speaker. So this, obviously revenue is an issue. And I think that's what's the driver of the sales tax. It is obviously, something needs to pay for all the services. And the question is, if it's just property tax right now, and there's not enough, you have to raise property tax, we have to have a supplemental form, whether it's income tax or sales tax, but then it's never politically popular. And so trying to explain it in such a way, and so now it looks like the discussion is that we cut services or we find sources of revenue, or maybe a mix of the both. So I think that's a realistic discussion, and I'm glad you're starting. One of the questions, I won't get too far down this rabbit hole because I would go on it forever, is the homeless crowd right now, and it's there's essentially a number of externalities based on what takes place from the negative impacts of policy decisions. And I think when you decentralize the problem, it just creates more problems in different areas. And so maybe I guess the question is, aside from the police policy, which is driving headfirst right now, maybe there can be a discussion about the support of the people outside, because right now there's it's heading in a bad way, and my position on it. So I'll just leave it at that. But I think there does need to be a really realistic discussion on the income side, because ultimately other one is everything's going to have to get cut, and it's cool. Right.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And that's a big conversation, but I will say, we certainly have heard, homelessness continues to be a concern, and there's a lot of, I think, confusion and actual misinformation about what money has gone out there and what it's paying for it. So that is part of it. We're not going to do a deep dive just on that topic, but we want to get that information out there. And also just ask people, how much is this a meeting priority going forward? How much should we be spending on this?
Okay, I want to do a quick time check, because you'll notice that we're having great conversations, but also 10 minutes times 4 does not equal 20 minutes. So my agenda is already crammed, so we're used to that. But it is 8 o'clock, so do we have additional questions for before we move on to our next person? Thanks. Thank you so much. Okay, so we've got the airport.
Yeah. Hi everyone, I'm Lex Silverton from the Communications and PR Specialist for the Ted Stevens Anchorage International Airport, your local airport. But I'm just here to present some of our community updates for the month of October. I'm just going to start by going through our agenda for community updates here, and then I'll come back to questions at the end. But this has been like a crazy couple of weeks for us. I'm not sure if you guys are aware, but we have big news. Southwest is coming to ANC in the summer of 2026, so we're super excited. They're going to be having 2 flights. They're seasonal flights so far, but it's to Las Vegas and Denver. And so it's, as we all know, Southwest is a huge airline, and it's kind of the one we were missing at ANC. So we're super excited to have them. And on top of that, we also have American Airlines, who is doing a daily flight to Phoenix in summer 2026. So that's also super exciting. So those are some more options for Alaskans to travel to the lower 48 in the summer. So we're excited about that. And the other exciting thing about Southwest is we were speaking to the COO of Southwest, and they were saying that right now they're thinking seasonal, but it could end up being year round. So that's also, an exciting thing. to not like be stuck just in one. So they'll kind of, sense out how it's going, and then they'll figure out what kind of the next step is with it. So that all happened last week, and so those were like huge updates for us. And the next big thing is our Part 150 noise study. And so this started back in April, and it's going to be going for roughly 2 years. But the Part 150 noise study is basically evaluating aircraft noise around the airport. And yeah, it's basically to come up with strategies for reducing and managing aircraft noise impacts on nearby communities, which includes your neighborhood, but also Sand Lake and Turnagain. And it will also prepare a noise exposure map and noise compatibility program to better understand and address the impacts. But last week we had, or maybe it was this week, I think actually it was yesterday, we had a meeting, a Part 150 noise meeting. And so I think that some of you guys might have been invited to go.
Is it short?
Yeah, okay, awesome. Yeah, and so they kind of broke down kind of where they're at with the study, but they also have a website, so it's the best way to see the timeline and then where they're at with the study so far. And then they've done monitoring in summer so far, but they'll also be doing some in winter time because the acoustics are a little bit different. And then next up we have our honor flight, our last frontier honor flight, and it's the fall version. And so they took off on Tuesday, yesterday, and then they'll be back on Saturday. But it's just a great way to recognize veterans in the Anchorage community. They go on a flight to Washington, D.C., go to some of the memorials. And so we have a great time celebrating our veterans over here. We always try to invite Alaskans to come and celebrate them when they go and come back. And so if anybody's interested in coming, their flight comes back on Saturday at 2:50. And so I will be there, but yeah, we just always try to do a water cannon salute, have, our OTC, all the fun things to just, show our support, for our veterans. And the next big thing is Ice Airport Alaska season 6 is starting up. And so I think the first episode aired on October 5th. But we're really excited to have the show airing again. We'll have 6 episodes in this season, like they do every season, but it's based at Ted Stevens Anchorage International Airport as well as Fairbanks International Airport. And yeah, it's just a great way to show our airports off, like all the cool things we're doing. So if you guys are interested in watching that, I recommend you to check it out. It's super awesome, and it's grown, it's gotten bigger and bigger every year. So that's super cool. And those are kind of the biggest things. If you know anybody interested in a job with airport, I recommend you guys to go to the local71.com/jobs or go to Workplace Alaska. And then if you guys are interested in receiving any press releases we put out, whether it's by the airport or the Department of Transportation, we recommend you to go to GovDelivery and sign up. We always put it at the bottom of our airport updates, but it's the best way to receive any news from the airports that's going on or big things. But yeah, those are kind of the biggest things for the month of October. If you guys have any questions, I'd love to answer them. Yeah.
Does the noise study, is it just the big jets or is it like Spenard?
That's a great question. So I think
It's like good most.
yeah.
It is like great.
Yeah,
That's wonderful.
I know that there was like a period of a week where they set out some different people volunteered and they put out noise monitoring technology into their backyard. And so I assume it could pick up both ANC and Lakewood since they're so close together. But yeah, I unfortunately couldn't make it to the meeting yesterday because I got too busy. But yeah, it's good to know. Yeah, and other big questions.
Is a big director been appointed yet?
No, but we do have an acting airport director, and his name is Aaron Danielson. He's also our operations manager for ANC, and so he is kind of acting in the role, but he won't be taking over that position. Right now it's vacant, and they haven't decided if they want to fill it or, but still in.
You did go back. Thank you so much. Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of noise study, we have our route to that committee. Bob, thank you for serving on the committee.
Yes, there was a meeting yesterday at the airport. It was technically open to the public as well, although it wasn't very well noticed, but it was very well attended. This was the second meeting of this noise study. The first meeting was in May here, it was an open house. And there'll be the next meeting, they didn't know when it would be. It would be during the winter. But the study's done about every 5 years, and it's called the Part 150 because that's that FAA regulation that sets out how these studies are supposed to be done. And basically, it's a mathematical model that they use. If these audio engineers know exactly what planes are taking off at one point, they can figure out how much noise they're generating in the neighborhood and create a map that shows how noisy these planes are to the neighborhood. And part of it is to determine what the impact is. And so the three neighborhoods that are affected most are Sand Lake, Turnagain, and Spenard. And so those are the ones that have representatives at these meetings. And one of the results of a prior Part 150 study was the creation of the preferential runway system at Anchorage, which says that all things being equal, and you're supposed to take off to the north and land to the west because those departures and arrivals have the lowest amount of impact on the community. So the models are going on right now. And there was also some noise monitors that were put out in different neighborhoods around here, including ones around Lake Hood. And Lake Hood generates a lot of noise, especially in the summertime. And part of the model is that it's supposed to measure the daylight, the 24-hour impact. So if you have a lot of noise in the daytime but not at night, it figures at a lower level. But if you get more noise at night, then it bumps up the average. So noise at night has a bigger impact. And so the problem is once they get up to a certain level of decibels, you can be in a situation where this area is incompatible with residential use. And they could say, well, people shouldn't be living here because it's too noisy. And we can try to minimize, but we might have to take action. What they did in the past, say at Alaska Landings, was in this area where it was too noisy for residential use because of one of these studies. And the federal government actually paid for noise reducing windows at Alaska Landings. I think they all have them. And I don't think that is going to happen. I just have a feeling this time around. But so anyway, so it's this process. So the next meeting is going to be an open house. They don't say what. It is in winter 2026. It all depends on how these models get produced by these engineers that are from other places. And so we're kind of dependent on that scheduling. So it's kind of a process, and so that's all I have.
Somebody have a question. It's so.
You know, what gets me is like the floodplains, they drive me just crazy, but some can land, I guess they have runways in the air that they have to take off and land, like little streets in the sky.
Normally, we heard about that too, for the big jets too. It's very streamlined now. Everybody's because the airspace is so constricted
Right.
that you have to, when you're told to land at a certain angle and sector, you've gotta be right on that.
Yeah, and some of the float plants are so quiet when they take off and land, and others are deafening. And
Yeah.
I've been told that some of that is be able to be controlled by the pilot,
Absolutely.
how they're flying the plane, is that?
Big difference is whether it's thrust flying service
Yes.
as opposed to.
Yeah, so I just wonder like what can be done about that? Like pilot behavior or pilot like courtesy or like,
Yeah, I mean, that would be part of the mitigation.
yeah,
It's sort of a give and take between what the airport, can do or pretend it can't do, and or whether it's just something that is the way it is,
yeah,
and the public has to accept it.
Yeah, there was a period of time where if you got the call numbers on the side of a private plane, that you could call, this was years way before you, that you could call the airport and you could say 3:50 on Sunday afternoon, plane number, blah, 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 came in and they were flying too low and too fast and too loud. And then they would talk to the pilot, but I don't think they're doing that anymore.
So having open houses, in these meetings, are they looking for input from the public, or is it more information sharing? And if we were to bring said input, what's the best way to do that? I mean, are they taking, it's really noisy in the summer, or do we need something a little bit more specific?
Yeah, I sense that specific helps. I mean, there was some really good complaints, input at this meeting yesterday from the committee members and also members of the public. There is a website, Part 150 Study, I think it's called. It's probably part of the airport's website, and you can put comments in there too.
And I also, this might be more for you, I think, I really appreciate the updates on the airport's website, if they haven't changed, like that. I love airplane noise, but they changed takeoffs and must just be takeoffs, because for 2 days, I felt like I was living at the end of the runway. And I was kind of going a little crazy, but I checked the website and I handle this till tomorrow, great, and like clockwork, at like 4 o'clock on Wednesday that day or whatever, there were no more planes every 3 minutes.
Yeah.
Off by my window.
Yeah, typically when we have a runway closure that causes, I guess redirection of, flight paths or, planes to fly in a different approach than they normally do. I'll always update it on our website and social media and try to post it just to let people know that it's going on. It just, normally it's not super long, it'll take like 1 or 2 days. Sometimes they're doing like general maintenance on the runway and or painting stuff. A lot of the time it's more common in the summer.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then I'll just let people know or try to update stuff to give people guidance of oh, it should stop soon. But yeah, sometimes there's not much we can do. And it's tricky too because of the wind patterns. Sometimes when it gets really windy in neighborhoods, it won't be that windy, but then on airport property, it's super windy. It's and it just changes a lot. But
just as an FYI, folks, if it seems noisier that day, you can check the airport website. It's the top thing in big bold letters. You have to sort of check yourself.
yes,
is it noisier? Sure it is. It'll stop being noisy tomorrow. Lunch.
Yeah, I would either just check the website or check on social media. But normally I'll try to update it whenever there's closures, stuff going.
So anybody have additional questions about airport noise? Okay, great, thank you, Bob. Thanks for representing Spenard. Do we have anybody to talk about trick or treat fish treat? Okay. Hey, smart guy.
a lot of vision of them following.
So, Creek. This night, I know, 4:30 to 6:30 along the Fish Creek Trail, right in Fish Creek Park. Like, Farm Street. We have, on our Facebook group page, you can find the link to sign up for a booth. If you want to sign up for a booth, we are looking for more people who want to have booths. Different, treat booths for the kids. And I mean, the more the merrier with that, so you can go with direction any. We have a lot of our regular community partners who are helping us out again, like the Parks Foundation and like Anchorage and some other groups. You know, we've got donations from Pilates is donating a bunch of coffee and hot cocoa for us, and the Beartooth is donating a bunch of popcorn and you know, and all the normal things. But we can always have more. We had a planning meeting. They was we got planning. And the next one is supposed to be next Wednesday, the 15th. The lead on it is Shauna, and she was supposed to be planning meetings over at her office. So excuse me, she works at RMG Real Estate, so it's right down the corner of Lowe's, and that's it. And so that's where the planning meeting was getting home. And then so next week, Wednesday, it's also gonna be out there. Yeah, that's it for that.
If people are interested in posting, where again should they send their information?
Well, there's a Google form, and we have the link to it on our Spenard Community Council Facebook page. So if you can go to the Facebook page for Spenard Community Council, you find it there. And then it's a click the form of very snazzy that you pick what part of the show you want to have your and give a little description. It's always better if your booth has some kind of game or something for the kids to do, besides just giving them game. But you know, also just them game, that's fine. Like our husband always has their kids fishing over one of the bridges for Swedish fish. You know, or something like that. Yeah, there's a lot of creative things. So, any questions? It's a super fun event. Can't tell everyone you make it on Halloween.
Okay, great. Same market. Okay. So because we had a light agenda tonight, it gave us a little bit more opportunity to hear from our presenters, but also it gives us an opportunity for me to hear from you. So your executive board, that raised our hands earlier and said our names. We set the agenda for our meetings, and we do it based on, you know, emails we get or things that we recognize are happening in the community. But I wanted to give folks an opportunity to add a meeting, tell us what you want to learn about, hear about. What do you want to have happen at these meetings? And that could be manipulative to just abstractly say in the middle of a meeting. So I brought big paper. And so we're going to start with, what do you love about Spenard? So while I grab said big paper, be thinking about what you love about Spenard. And I'm going to grab my paper over your pink clips. And I promise this isn't, I don't know, mood, for lack of a better term. Like, we're going to use this, we will take this feedback and we will determine what it is we can talk about at future meetings. I stand directly in front of. And folks online, I'm going to ask you to put what you love about Spenard in the chat. I can write it, somebody else can write it. If you want your own marker, you can write down your own, but that's fine too, but I'm happy to write. So. What are our favorite things about Spenard? What do we love about it? Sure, that's good. Take a prostate. Yeah.
It's historic.
Historic.
It's creative.
Creative.
It's diverse.
Diverse.
Walkability.
Walkability.
Yes.
I love that these meetings feel more collaborative and friendly than other community council meetings I've attended.
Meetings are really and collaborative.
It's like a small town, its own small town.
It's like its own small town.
I like our quirky little houses.
Quirky little.
I like the second Saturday.
Your location within acreage, it's kind of neat. No highway driving.
Minnesota feels like a highway made so loud.
Yeah.
Looking at that.
Snow highway.
The eclectic small businesses.
Well, small businesses.
Actually support small businesses too.
This is one of those where like you never saw it this time. We saw it.
Too many people asking for rides when you.
Where's that? They chat. Then I get to the part. Where's the next one? The people, neighbors, the people, neighbors.
I like the vibe. I feel like Spenard's gonna vibe.
Good night. Jen, do we have any online comments for what people love about Spenard?
I agree, yeah.
Okay, wait. Do we need more paper for the love?
Do like in a sense location.
We have location within English, yeah. Centrally located.
People that care about their neighbors.
We'll care about our neighbors. Always.
Things to do, nightlife, entertainment, movies, et cetera, et cetera.
Fisher, is that very strong?
Bernard Road,
Choose title.
Yes. So it's not just. Looking through. When you still write down things you love, fun. Remember, it says, they sell chopsticks, still like panties. Stuff like that.
The gym.
Motivation for some, that's good news. So where are, some people that call them challenges and problems. I'm working on being more optimistic. Yes,
Keeping the Fish Creek Trail garbage free and camp free, especially around the Northwood. Northwood to Spenard section.
So keeping trails free of trash and used as intended. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Great.
Infill of vacant lots. Health and safety.
Yes.
All the projects or projects that have been in design for 20 years. Or counting.
Hold on, what was that? Couldn't figure.
All road projects or projects that are interminably in design. And they're not actually happening.
Oh, yeah, just projects. Specifically roads, or are there any?
Spenard, Chicago Way. Minnesota, 36. What are we? All the roads. The roads, out of the thing ever. Roads. Yeah.
And then we're bouncing on the lines together, and that's love for that area to stop being used as a drag strip.
More crosswalks.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, it's something better at that Minnesota and Benson Northern Lights intersection. Be wonderful.
What about the other ones?
Oh, the Northern Lights and Benson and Minnesota, that whole disaster plan they got going there. Like, we could do better than that.
Generous.
Or.
Yeah. Safe pedestrian crossing.
Overpasses.
Yeah, an overpass would be fine. Wouldn't even be that expensive. We managed to do it a few other places in town.
Save for all users.
Do you like the three?
Mm. Good one.
What is other people's perceptions of Spenard?
Yes.
Seeing my own so try. What communication I didn't know from you.
I like our reputation.
Okay, more nice. Yeah.
Oh, fluid.
Oh, isn't it? Okay.
I know people probably wanna say homeless, but I wanna say homeless shelters. My cousin's homeless and he complains about them all the time, like, you have to be there at 4, you don't get a bed. I'm now at 60 days, so I'm not allowed to stay there. Many other things I can't think of right now.
So when we say homeless shelters.
I'm not
It says
sure
it
they're in
on
Spenard.
for Spenard. Like how.
Maybe.
They all got one.
More options, yeah, just more options.
More housing?
Affordable housing.
That's high for.
Someone mentioned public transportation.
Transportation.
Sure, if you're welcome.
You feel that?
Yeah.
Finding the Fish Creek Trail extensions.
What about
We had the lake project, this is.
Oh, leave it. Oh, sir, yeah, waters.
Is there already something up there around bringing up to speed trailer courts and other areas that haven't been renovated or with full services? So kind of like having a baseline of quality living for all. I know it's a little dicey to talk about, but on the state level, we're really working on incentivizing owners to bring up the level of standards so that folks want to live in these neighborhoods.
Okay, let's,
Mhm.
so just incentivizing developers.
Mhm.
So quality of living environment infrastructure of the mobile home.
Well, yeah, that's better. Yeah.
Okay, and so the reason that I had us do this part, is so all of our brains can talk about it, and so we're, you know, kind of feeding off each other's ideas. To help us determine who do we want to hear from and how do we pair these? How do we keep the things we love as Spenard, how do we tackle these opportunities for improvements? Who are the departments or organizations or a word I'm not thinking of because it's 8:30 on Wednesday. How do we make this up? So I'm gonna get another sheet of paper. We'll do that in green.
We have so many Airbnbs, which is probably all of Anchorage or the US or the planet. But it is taking away 3,000 housing units in Anchorage.
Opportunity for change.
I wish we could tax them.
3,000 out of the 10,000 that the mayor wants.
They're actually talking about that on the assembly.
Yeah, I wish they would tax them somehow, at least.
So.
Would be
Relieve a
something.
little bit of the pressure.
And Airbnb is like hate housing access. Or fair, it's not right.
Addressing short-term rentals.
Yeah, thank you, better.
I don't see everything.
Yes.
Yeah, why don't we go?
Address about short-term, okay.
And even places that are illegal. Still get our revenues.
Yeah. They're cute, but they are getting too many. So we're trust them. Talk to get more love, and help them address these opportunities. Okay, thank you.
There was a guy here a couple of months ago talking about a homeless shelter.
Who's that?
There was a gentleman here months ago talking about a homeless shelter. I forget who he was.
It's a homeless coalition.
Maybe, yeah.
Anchorage
He was-
coalition that helps.
Yeah, I think he was even on the agenda. He was a speaker.
Who was it?
I don't remember. I apologize. Was it?
Tim and Jason said talking about. One of the ones that were talking about parents dinner. House policy your homes that you're.
Well, this is like 4 or 5 months ago.
I'm very bad at time, so
Okay.
Oh, under this is the workforce.
Well, looking cheats. To see if that's what we need.
Well,
Who would control the lighting for the tunnels and Fish Creek? I'm not sure who you would contact for those, right? Parks.
I think they were working with Parks and Rec, it sounds like, and so that might have been GOT or the beauty, depending on where it was.
DOT.
DOJ.
Planning commission.
Right now, it's not, I was very. Yeah.
No.
Commercial property owners.
Commercial property owners. Did you guys have anything in mind? Or are they opening warm conversation?
I think it's also important, like, so slots, I mean, it's such a, thought, there's what, that's, that lot, you do.
You know,
We had we just here, that's what reference was. I know we're on that.
I do not.
So.
It's a jam. Would it be helpful to hear from the planning and zoning commission about how that whole process works?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
I'm not sure if you've touched on this already, because I haven't heard everything everyone said, but in this area, there is a very big growing population of seniors who do not have access to food. That's been a big growing area. The Lutheran food pantry would be able to really help articulate that well, but their data is unbelievable.
Yeah, I mean, close that gap.
So is the suggestion more pantries or more funding or just?
Well, I mean, that's the question. The vision is
Okay.
that everyone has access to food.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I
And
know
all the
this.
other things that we've talked about, right? Transportation that's safe, lots of walking and biking and, I think the vision is just access.
I think a food bank would be able to speak to that as well, the Alaska food bank. Cause I think they run residential.
No, so Lutheran is a standalone pantry, but they get through big warehouse.
They all report
to the pantry, but well.
Yeah, they're definitely a food bank. They run the federal dollars and the state dollars. Yeah.
Yeah, the executive board last week was talking about. Or, I forgot.
September.
Yes. Who else can we talk to?
Humor, John, your departments.
Planning department.
We got that already.
It would be nice to have people like do Russell, he has some kind of food distribution thing that he does to tell us about it and how we get help.
Just as a byline, Duke's got an event at the Nave, this Sunday, it's between 2
Very dress room.
and 7 or 7:30, and so you can register for that. But yeah, it's he's got an event for Sunday, sorry.
Yeah.
Too,
Make a sit down dinner.
yeah.
It's called Make a Sit Down Dinner.
Make it sit down there. It's actually goes right.
It's on the 12th, I think.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think we need an update on, I can't remember that guy who came in there. The plans that they were gonna do for 45th, 47th, 48th that did not happen this year. So I don't know if it's not traffic, but it's road planning, whatever. Call me, it was road.
Separate.
Yeah,
Yes.
have him back.
Oh, he's with. Somewhere in the planning department with traffic. I'm gonna write exactly, because I don't remember when that
Yeah.
is.
Perfect, for me.
Oh, yeah, Tyler. Hi, I'm here.
Yeah.
Maps could speak to the big picture of road project stuff.
and the federal level.
Okay. Here we have two more meetings in 2025, right? What would be the two big concepts that we might want to discuss, learn about, have at our meeting on the agenda?
I would really like to get the Tisdo folks back here to talk to us. I think that's huge. And it's very time limited, so.
I'm gonna start that one, or maybe also yes, the third person to tell me that since our meeting is not about this. We'll. What else for the rest of 2025?
I mean, honestly, what Representative Galvin said about the seniors and no access to food, especially with the winter months coming up, to me, that seems really timely. Something I would definitely be interested to know more about, especially if there's strong data to support it. And what we could do in the coming months.
Okay. We have backup in case Aaron's available, or is there anybody in chat?
Just a couple of other ideas about. Sure.
That's the thing. Okay. Do we have any more for that?
You know, I know Mark, you'll be.
You know your audience. There's a few things we have to talk about direction. Okay, so what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna reach out to the Tisdo group. That I feel that popular vote, not a formal vote, but lots of people want to hear from that. I'll also reach out to Lutheran Social Services and the food bank. And to see if they also have just any other ideas, any other people who can help us out and how to use this as a community. I'll reach out to DOT. Was there anything in particular? Or I can pull the opportunities that the DOT involved.
They make sure that pedestrian safety and stop signs, I think would be really two of the main ones, so it's fair.
But also talk to AMATs too, like.
Yeah.
But talk to AMATs too, though.
Yes, yeah. It would be an email. Okay, so what I'm gonna do, I'm going to put these up in a document more legibly than my writing on the wall and handwriting. I will post them on our website in our I think we have a meeting handouts thing on the community council Spenard webpage. So you can check that out in the next couple of days. And I'll have this posted so you can take a look. If you have any free AM red ideas for like, I should have said that, email me at spenardcc.com and I'll add it to a growing list of things we can look into to help our community out. Does anybody have any final thoughts to add before I entertain motions to adjourn? Does anybody?
Motion to adjourn.
Seconded by Peggy. We're adjourned, 8:46 PM. Thank you all.